Hi, Patrice. Thanks for joining us. We're going to get started in about 10 minutes.
Hi, okay.
Thanks. We start at 6, so you're early. Thank you.
Show me colors I ain't never seen. She took
Hi, Smitty. We're going to get started at 6 a little after 6 p.m. FYI, you're not muted, but great music.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry about that. I have to leave at about 6:25. It takes 20 minutes to get home. Can I just do it on the phone and be muted and go from there? Will that be okay?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm just gonna leave the phone sit like this, and I got to figure out how to mute it, and then we'll be okay.
All right. Are you on your phone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, it should be on the bottom left.
Yeah, it just isn't showing me anything but your. Wait a minute. There we go. Oh, yeah, Mr. T's there.
Corruption just play out nakedly. You mentioned earlier,
Ridley Thomas, yes, Supervisor Ridley Thomas.
is going to negotiate a deal with Elaine Maxwell.
Hi, Supervisor.
Heard.
Well, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
One day at a time. One day.
Right? But God is good all the time. So we'll
Yep.
Hard to find people who say, like, I'm flying out of the country. I'm not sure if
Thank you for joining us, everyone. We're going to give it a few moments for everybody to join us, and then we'll get started. All right. Good evening, everyone. I say we give it about 30 more seconds and then get started.
All right.
Hello, Pastor Johnson.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
Doing pretty well. Nothing
Well,
to complain about.
oh, nice. We'll take it. Well, you're in the middle of my screen, so that's great for me. It's a holy Zoom. So now I can be on my best bad behavior.
Oh, okay. Well, just give it all to us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
She's all right.
Yeah, she's fine. She's sitting there trying to make her some fries and chicken.
Hey, Mary, you need your mute.
But you can make fries and chicken for us too if you want.
I'm sorry you guys heard me.
No worries. All right. Well, I think on that note, we can go ahead and get started. So, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Thursday, July 24th Empowerment Congress Homelessness Working Group meeting. We hope everyone is having a great week. And I have put our agenda in the chat for anybody who just joined. I will drop it in again momentarily. As before we get started today, I'd love to do some introductions. So I will start and pass it over. My name is Rhea, and I am delighted to be the co-chair of our Empowerment Congress Homelessness Working Group. And I will pass it on to Maria S. Maria S., you're on mute. All right, I guess Maria doesn't want to talk to me right now, so I will pass it on to Pastor Johnson.
Norman Johnson, First New Christian Fellowship Baptist Church, and I'm glad to be on this call tonight.
Thank you, sir. Who would you like to pass it on to?
Let me pass it on to, is that Patrice Hamilton?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Patrice Hamilton. I work for LA Global Care, and I am the operations supervisor. I will pass it to Janice Martin. Is that how you pronounce your name?
Oh, that's me. Good evening, everybody. Janice Martin, member of the Empowerment Congress.
Hmm.
Who would you like to pass it to, Miss Janice?
I don't know who's gone, so I just came on, so I'll let you choose. Thanks.
Okay, I'll pass it on to my favorite supervisor, Supervisor
All right.
MRT.
Thanks very much, Madam Chair, and welcome to everyone on the call. Margaret Lee Thomas here, founder of the Empowerment Congress. Pleased to be with you here tonight for another working group session. We remain faithful to our charge that this is the defining moral issue of our time. To the extent that that is the case, we dedicate ourselves to continuing to collaborate, to learn, to educate ourselves and others on this issue. And so thanks so much again for being here. I will then ask Mary Jones if she will weigh in.
Hi, it's Mary Jones. I am a retired government employee, and I am an Empowerment Congress member forever. And I will pass it on to Maria S. Not sure if she's gone already. Maria?
Maria S. Well, okay, in the interim, we will pass it to Smitty. Well, it looks like I'm picking all the wrong people, so hopefully I will pass it to Glenn.
Good evening. Glenn Griffin, Director of Operations for LA Global Care. I missed the beginning. Are we just explaining who we are?
Yep.
Yep.
All right, cool. Then I'll popcorn it to Patrice.
All right.
I guess I'll go again.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I can pass it on unless you'd like to go again, Patrice.
No, you can pass it on.
All right. We are going to pass it to Mr. Darick Blackshere for his introduction.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Ms. Rhea. Darick Blackshere with the Government and Community Relations team here at LAHSA. And Ms. Rhea, I'm going to pass it back to you to popcorn it because I lost track about who's supposed to go next.
That's okay. I think we got everyone. So thank you, everyone, for your introductions. Oh, Smitty, I see that you unmuted. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, ma'am. My apologies.
Sure,
I was
no
trying to
worries.
talk while it was muted.
Happens.
So I'm David Smith. I've been a member for a long time, but my emails had been getting routed off in some other space. I managed to luckily find this one here, and I wanted to make sure that I got back with the Empowerment Congress. I represent the Francisco Homes. I'm the program manager there. And like I said, I've been a member for a long time.
Well, fantastic. Thank you for joining us and welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So with that, I'd like to do a recap. Once again, welcome to our July 24th Empowerment Congress Homelessness Working Group meeting. I'd like to do a recap of our meeting 2 weeks ago on July 10th. We covered some pertinent issues as they were related to current events, articles in the news, and I think we had arguably my favorite speaker ever. All of our speakers are amazing. So Darick, you are awesome. But we also got to hear from Supervisor MRT as he led us through kind of the history behind some of these articles and through the articles. And so it really helped us set the context with homelessness, a timeline of where we've been, where we are, and where we hope to go. We all know where we need to go. We all know that and recognize that homelessness is the moral crisis of our time and that, of course, it needs to end. And so we hope that the articles that we presented at our last meeting were helpful, that they provided context. It was a really special meeting and discussion. And as well as I'd like to share updates on Praxis, which is one of my favorite publications. We had the opportunity last meeting, and we'd like to again thank Miss Janice Martin for doing a wonderful job with supporting with Praxis. Praxis has been coming into your inboxes for quite some time, and we promise that it will soon resume. With that, I would like to pass it over to Supervisor MRT for to the next part of our meeting. Supervisor?
Thanks very much, Rhea. And again, welcome to everyone. Delighted that you are here. It occurs to me that we talk about homelessness in terms of a crisis, not a dilemma, not a conundrum, but a crisis. It also occurs to me that it's a long-standing crisis, so it is not a crisis of moment. It's not an episodic crisis. It is a persistent crisis. Some even define it as an unrelenting crisis. Crisis, by definition, gives opportunity for intervention and decision. Therefore, we have some choices to make, some decisions to make. The city and county of Los Angeles made a decision in the early 90s, pursuant to a lawsuit filed by the city against the county, to do better addressing homelessness. Over the past 3 decades, the problem, if you want to describe it as such, the issue, the social malady, has gotten more profound, more persistent, more chronic. But I choose not to use the language more intractable. It is our responsibility to step up and do what needs to be done here. Again, the city and the county sought to face the crisis and gave birth to LAHSA, Los Angeles Homeless Shelter Authority. And tonight we have a representative from LAHSA, the Associate Director of External Affairs, and leading on community engagement and public relations initiatives and best practices. Darick Blackshere is a graduate of CSUN a decade ago. And distinguishes himself prior to that as working at the Automobile Club. So if you have insurance issues, call Darick. he can he can get he can get you hooked up. So I'll be calling later, man. Don't worry about it. But having done that for a half a decade, I think his heart led him in the area of focusing on the issue that we all care about. And he does it with a level of passion. You go to some of the YouTubes of LAHSA and look what Darick is saying and how he's engaging people, I think you'll get the point that I'm attempting to make. So we're delighted to have him here tonight with us to characterize the annual count, as it is often referred to, time and point, uh, federally mandated to happen every other year, but the city of Los Angeles, the county of Los Angeles, does it each year. And so Blackshere is on point, and we are delighted that he is here. Let me introduce you to him and ask him to take the floor. Darick?
Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much for that. I wasn't expecting the intro. I greatly appreciate that. So thank you guys.
Indeed.
And if you don't mind, I'll share my screen and I'll jump right into it to share some of these results with you guys. I do like to say that it's a bit of a presentation. It's a bit of a longer one. So I want to make sure to give you guys as much stats as I can bring and then to just really go through the full narrative with everybody. Because that's what we need to do to move forward, right? So
that's right.
Thank you again for that. Give me a quick second to let's make sure I share the screen properly. And Ray, I'm looking your way to make sure you can see it.
We can see it. Thank you.
Perfect. And I'll share these slides with everybody afterwards for anybody who's interested, or Ray, I'll send them over to you for you guys to send them out.
Okay, great. Thank you. We've also linked them in the agenda.
Oh, beautiful. So thank you guys all again. And good evening. My name is Darick Blackshere, the Associate Director of Government and Community Relations here at LAHSA. And like I said, thank you guys for giving me the chance to even come over here and speak with this. And I'm looking forward to any feedback you guys can share because we like to try to make these slides and this presentation as iterative as possible. So after we've done the global release last Monday, this is actually going to be the first presentation we've done on the local level. So I'm happy to say you guys get the first one. So any speed bumps you see along the way, this practice makes perfect, right? So we're going to grow together.
Yeah, put that AAA on it with them speed bumps.
Exactly. I got the AAA take to it as well. And of course, before I continue, I also want to take the time to really say thank you to not only our service providers and a lot of our outreach workers, but all of you guys as well. I recognize a lot of you guys either from your names or from your emails, and I know a lot of you guys spent time counting with us also. And the accuracy that we get from those numbers comes from all the volunteers that we had. We had 5,990, I believe, volunteers this year. And we can't do that without you guys. So I always want to give thanks to you guys for what you guys do, because it's 3 days worth of counting. It's 4 or 5, 6 hours in the middle of the night to do that. And it's asking a lot from all of our partners. And we've obviously learned that we can't do it alone. And with that, I think it's safe to say that these aren't just numbers that we're about to go over. They represent people who are our neighbors, our friends, our family, people who are looking to us to help end the humanitarian crisis that we see on our streets, as you guys had mentioned earlier. And like you said, LAHSA does conduct the largest unsheltered point-in-time count in the nation. And we do so in accordance with the rules and the regulations established by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD. And then we partner with our experts from University of Southern California who produce the estimates we're going to present today. And then HUD validates all of these data points before we release them. I probably should have brought somebody to run the slides to make it a little bit more seamless, but it'll be a work in progress. And this year we really are really are confident in the accuracy because of our data reconciliation process that we've gone through. So once county has concluded, a small but dedicated team from our data management department begins this reconciliation process to address the erroneous data points collected by some of the volunteers during the night of the count. Most of these points you'll see are clicks made at the deployment site, usually when the volunteers are going out there practicing. Or sometimes you'll see somebody left the phone on in their pocket and they continue to count instead of going back to close it out. But this year, 100% of the data for the homeless count was entered digitally and signed off by the people during the count. This enabled a simpler and faster data reconciliation process that did not require reviewing paper documentation that we've done in previous years. And of course, that was made possible by our switch from pen and paper to the digital Esri app that we've been working with for the past 3 years. And as a reminder, this count is best thought of as a regional snapshot of people experiencing homelessness at a particular point in time. The statistical methods used are designed for the regional level. So most of the presentation I'm going to go over is going to show either the county of LA or the Los Angeles Continuum of Care. Because as jurisdictions become smaller, this more geographically specific data becomes less precise. So oftentimes you guys hear that common term, the multiplier. The more down or the more locally jurisdictions we get, the less accurate that multiplier would become. So that's the primary reason you see most of the estimates that we publish as actual counts instead of only estimated counts. And I'll quickly note that whenever we do talk about the Los Angeles COC, that excludes the cities of Long Beach, Glendale, and Pasadena, which you all know are their own separate continuums of care. And lastly, these numbers are only a point in time. And to get the overall picture, you do need to also combine it with the information and the data we have in HMIS or other reports that you may see, as we briefly spoke about last time, such as the RAND report. And now for the reason why I assume that we're all here. Apologies for all of that coming off on the side. I am proud to announce that thanks to the coordinated efforts of LAHSA, of course, our city partners and our county partners, our service providers, outreach workers, and everybody here on this call, homelessness in Los Angeles County has declined by an estimated 4% during the time of the count to an estimated 72,308 people. The city of Los Angeles also experienced a decrease, down 3.4% to an estimated 43,699 people. Now, the numbers I'm showing right now do represent all 4 continuums of care. Ms. Rhea, next time I'm going to send you these slides to help me out when we run them through.
Well, Darick, if it's easier, on the top left where you see from current slide, if you press that, it'll make your presentation kind of full screen and you can just use the arrows to go back and forth.
Look at that. How are we seeing it now? Is it looking a little bit better for everybody? Give me a second. Can we still see it all?
Yeah, or if you go to the very bottom, see where it says 75%? Go to the left. No, go to the left. That. That should also make your slideshow.
Got it. Bear with me for 1 second because I was going to throw off the other notes that I was going to give you guys some extra information from. Like I said, we're going to make this an iterative process because I'm usually doing this in person.
Teamwork, Darick. We got
This
this.
is teamwork, exactly. We'll do it like this time. So going back to where we're at, we have seen a decrease both in the city and in the county. And with 2 consecutive years of reductions, reducing homelessness is now a trend in both the city and the county. And of course, this comes to the thanks of the investments in addressing unsheltered homelessness by the city and the county, such as our Inside Safe and our Pathways Home operations. And across the county, unsheltered homelessness has dropped by an estimated 9.5%, while sheltered homelessness is up 8.5%. And again, over the last 2 years, unsheltered homelessness across the county has decreased by 14%. The city of Los Angeles also experienced an estimated 7.9% drop in unsheltered homelessness, and the sheltered population rose by 4.7%. So over the last 2 years, unsheltered homelessness has fallen by an estimated 17.5% in the city of Los Angeles. And again, we believe that the drops in unsheltered homelessness in the city and the county are a direct result of their encampment resolution efforts. And these efforts from all stakeholders combined to make 27,994 permanent housing placements in 2024. And you guys see from the graph, since the passage of Measure H, we have nearly doubled the annual number of permanent housing placements our system makes. You know, not to give ourselves a pat on our back, but I do think that's getting pretty incredible with the amount of progress that we've been making over these past couple of years. And that's a testament to the thousands of people who wake up every day dedicated to bringing unhoused neighbors home, or people who stay onto meetings at 6 o'clock to bear with me as I work through technology difficulties working on presentations. But of course, at the same time, we know that tens of thousands of people become newly homeless each year. And so the data that we've helped prepare for the Executive Committee on Regional Homeless Alignment, or ECRA, showed more than 60,000 people access services for the first time in 2024. Now, of course, not all of these people needed permanent housing placements, but everyone needed something from the system. And unfortunately, we also know that with reductions in rental subsidy funding in the coming fiscal year, we're going to be pretty hard pressed to maintain this current pace, which makes it even more important that we commit to the creation of new permanent housing through resources such as the Los Angeles County Affordable Housing Solutions Agency, or LAHSA. So this next part, normally we have Dr. Henwood from USC who would go over the methodology behind the multiplier, but I want to give you guys a snapshot into it anyways. Now, once again, I am no statistician, so I maybe can't do the full math behind it, but I can show you guys the breakdown of how the numbers are accumulated. So there are three main components to the overall count. And again, this portion of the count is going to speak specifically to the Los Angeles COC, not the county in and of itself. So for the Los Angeles Continuum of Care, the total number of the three components was 67,918 people experiencing homelessness. That's made up of the housing inventory count, or you may commonly hear as the HIC count, which is a snapshot of all available beds and units in the COC for people experiencing on any given night. This data also comes from HMIS and then direct reports from non-HMIS shelter providers, meaning we'll go to the service providers and they'll tell us how many people on the night of the Wednesday of the count were enrolled in a bed at that night. And then anybody not enrolled in HMIS, we will reach out to them and ask them to submit this number as well. And then you'll have the unsheltered adult count, which you guys you're probably most familiar with, which is commonly thought of as the point in time count. And that is the combination of the street count, which is a visual tally, along with the demographic surveys. So the visual tally, which we do the night of, is a non-invasive count. We aren't knocking on any RV doors. We aren't opening any tents. Unless if it's wide open and you can see inside, you would only count the tent or you would only count the person. And then the demographic survey is what we partner with USC on, where they will actually go and they will literally survey people and ask them a fair amount of questions. And the third component is also a survey-based unsheltered youth count. And so these numbers also represent the COC. And as you can see, we've seen a decrease in the dwelling types as well across the board, with the large decrease in tents and cars in both the entire COC and the city. So the next step would be to take that survey data to determine how many people are living within each dwelling type, and that is how we come up with the multiplier. So for the total dwellings of 18,616, you would then multiply the 1.75 general multiplier to come up with a total of 32,590 people inside of makeshift dwellings, plus the 10,483 total people that we saw literally on the street to get the COC total. And of course, all of that incredibly confusing math comes from USC. So like I said, I could try to really do the breakdown of it and send you guys that, but there's a lot of mathematical symbols I've never seen before, and it's not all that fun to work with. So I thank them for that. And now I want to give you guys a chance to just look across the spas to see what type of differences that we saw. In a majority of the regions across the COC, we saw a decrease. But in the few regions that we didn't see a decrease, the increase was of less than 100 people. So I'll point out Spa 1, Spa 2, Spa 8. And again, we attribute most of that success to the emergency response coordinated focusing on ending the unsheltered homeless. That's why we saw such a big drop in those makeshift shelters. But with that, this year's results still show that those experiencing homelessness in our region continue to be overwhelmingly people of color. Black people are disproportionately represented, and the largest group of people on our streets are still Latinx. A few other things that we've seen this year is an increase in the total number of families experiencing homelessness, though we've seen a drop in the transitional age youth population. We also allow people to self-report on some of the surveys. So 26% of people reported experiencing serious mental illness, and that is about a 2% rise from last year. But we've also seen about a 13% decrease in people reporting substance use disorders. We've seen about a 3.8% drop in the number of adults experiencing homelessness, and I think it's of no surprise that single adults make up the largest portion. Although I'm also happy to share that the number of older adults, which is 55 plus, has seen a decrease of 9%. And I like to attribute that to the former Home Safe program that I actually still foresee. We can also see a lot of gender-specific breakouts. I also want to add in that if you were to try to add these numbers up, they would not add up to the total because people can self-report and self-identify. So you can choose to be man and non-binary or questioning and transgender. But for the past 2 to 3 years, we've been able to expand the amount of options for people to self-identify. And friendly reminder, this is across the continuum of care, not necessarily just the entire county. Another thing we can see is the population of first episode of homelessness. And these estimates are produced using responses to questions from the demographic survey, such as, is this your first time experiencing homelessness, or how long has your first time been? And another thing that I think will come of no surprise to anybody is that 55% of people entering their first episode of homelessness say economic hardship was the leading factor. Again, that should be of no surprise because across the board in LA County, rent continues to be far too high for far too many people. And according to the California Housing Partnership, nearly 500,000 low-income households in LA County do not have access to an affordable home. And this number I can tell you is going up, but the average rent for a 2-bedroom apartment in LA County was around $2,500, and I believe it's closer to $2,700 now. Which means renters in LA County need to earn just over $100,000 per year to afford a 2-bedroom home. People who are struggling probably don't make anything close to that amount. And of course, we've seen a significant gap in the eviction filings reach a decade high in last year as well. More and more people struggling to pay their rent. But with our region's focus on encampment resolutions, we have yielded positive effects and positive results for those experiencing chronic homelessness. So LACOC experienced an estimated 13.9% decrease in chronic unsheltered homelessness, which is one of our most vulnerable populations. And the number of people experiencing chronic homelessness in shelter increased 22.4%. And over the last 2 years, the number of people experiencing unsheltered chronic homelessness declined by a total of 22%. So again, we have been able to make progress with our most vulnerable neighbors because the city and the county with us and a lot of you guys as key partners have made strategic changes that are bringing real results to our streets, and namely bringing people inside, into shelters where they do have access to food, water, services, and where we do know where they're at. And I like to say this is made possible because all parties came together under the goal to end unsheltered homelessness. Maybe alignment actually does work. And with this data, we do show that people experiencing homelessness are successfully moving through the rehousing system. Last year, I really caveated slightly higher rates, but I think this year it's just safe to say that they're moving through the rehousing system at higher rates than seen in previous years. And that one is not just because of LAHSA, not just because of the service providers. That is because everybody who takes the time to do something to help. Now, we've seen the numbers and we've seen the movement, but it's not just about the data. At the heart of it all, and I think you've all heard this time and time and time again, this is about why we do what we do. Because for every chart, every figure, every estimate represents a real person. The count, all of our efforts come down to one major question. Why do we show up? I could even say, why'd you guys come to this meeting tonight? Can't answer that for you, and I'll never try to answer that question for you. But I would think it's because you all believe that one way or another, that everybody should not have to live without shelter. And if they do, it does not mean that they have to live without dignity. But you all understand that change doesn't happen on its own. It takes people who care, people who count, that's my pitch to get you guys to join the homeless count, and people who refuse to look away. So before I close, I'm going to ask you all to take a quick second to ask yourselves, why do you care? Why do you guys continue to not look away? I could tell you mine. I could tell you in one word what drives me forward. And at the end, I'm hoping that I can ask you guys, what is your one word? My one word is going to be harmony. The work that I do, the way that I bring people home, the way that I can help address the people on the streets, the way that I can help people here is by bringing harmony back to the people that we serve, to our community, or back to my own life. So I ask you again, what's your why? And is your why strong enough to keep pushing this work forward, even against all the obstacles we're about to face in this upcoming year? Because I think that this presentation just showed that we aren't imagining progress anymore. We're actually delivering it. But it only works when we do it together. So homelessness is down, shelter placements are up, and the data shows a coordinated and joint response is creating results that we can build on. But obviously make no mistakes, right? This isn't the finish line. This is just proof that alignment and coordination works, that care works, and that people working together works. And that makes a difference. So it took volunteers, providers, policymakers, outreach workers, analysts, and every single person on this call here today to make that difference. So all I'm going to hope is that our why, our collective why, is strong enough to carry this momentum forward. So thank you guys for allowing me to present today.
Great work, Darick.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm happy to take any questions and provide you guys with any extra data that I can.
Nicely done, Darick.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much. Ms.
Miss
Janice?
Janice?
Hi, Eric. Thanks so much, President. Great to see you again. I just met you a week ago, a little week ago. So see you again. A few, but I'm not gonna ask them all at once. What I have
Janice, you're cutting out a little bit. It's choppy. Is that for everybody? Or I don't know if it's mine audio.
It's choppy here too.
Okay.
any
Thank you.
better now? Is this choppy?
Oh, A little bit.
You know, I don't have that in my house, so I try to some AirPods. Let's see if it's for the other one. Do you hear any better now?
I think we can try for the question.
Okay, well, you sound better. I don't know if you can hear me any better.
Not
But
really, but if it we'll keep going, and if it doesn't work, we'll just ask you to type it in the chat. Does that work, Janice?
Bless you.
Bless you, supervisor.
with that too, um, I'm gonna try to ask my question. My background noise gets to be a little noisy. Um, can you hear me any better now?
Yes.
Yeah, we could hear you now.
Way better.
Okay, yeah, it might be the AirPods. So I wanted to know, Darick, if you know if these numbers include the people who were deceased in relation to homelessness, if that number of people, because I remember last year it was definitely over 2,000 people who passed away and some and just died related to homelessness in some way. So I'm just wondering if that number is included in the overall results of the count. Do you know?
To an extent, yes, it's part of the multiplier. So USC takes that into consideration when they build out the multiplier. Ray, once they finish the 2025 version, I'll share with everybody their entire breakout. And
Okay.
in the math, it does take that into consideration as well. Obviously, the rest of the count being observational. So when we're counting the literal people, it's just the people that we see. So it's hard to take that portion into consideration, although it is built into HMIS data as well. But the majority of that comes from the USC multiplier.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And then I'll just ask one more and
Of
give
course.
other people an opportunity. So I've kind of been at the table around the table on this for a while. And when I came into this, to the understanding of how devastating homelessness was, the primary focus for me then, as it still is now, is that there was a disproportionate number of African American people. In fact, we were the face of homelessness. However, now in most of the rooms I sit in, the conversation is not about African American people, it's mostly about Latino people. And God bless all of them, because the struggle was real, whatever color your skin is or your ethnic background, if you're on the streets and homeless. However, the difference is, as you well know in your role, is that Latino or Hispanic people are 50% probably plus of the population in LA, and African American people are under 8%. We're closer to 7. And so I keep asking this question about how we're balancing the disparity. And I want to know what you can tell me about how that's happening, because I think it's great news that the numbers are going down, but to be 30 some odd percent, 34% of the homeless when you're only 7% of the population, versus being the greatest percentage of the homeless when you're 50% plus of the population, is a little unequitable to me. So what, if anything, is being done to bring those numbers into alignment? I don't know that I would feel good that 7% of the people who were homeless were Black, but I'd feel a whole lot better if I knew that it was 7% African American, because they were 7% of the population versus 34%. So can you tell me anything that could make me more hopeful?
I can start by telling you a few things that make you a little hopeful, but I think a portion of it is going to be a little dishopeful as well. So we did get all the recommendations from the Black people experiencing homelessness. I call it the task force. I forgot the exact name of it, although I do have the report in my file that I need to continue reading. And we had an equity team that was beginning projects on it to see how we can address it in a systemic level and then at a local level as well. Understanding that it was a little bit more nuanced and we needed to give more attention to it. As those projects started to pick up, we started to make matrix groups here within LAHSA that was going to go out to the different spas as well to address the recommendations. that came to a giant pause as the federal government started to put stipulations on using the word DEI. So you guys probably even noticed here at LAHSA, we had to change an entire department from our equity department to community opportunity department. We also removed the word equity and inclusion from our mission statement. So a lot of the work that we had finally started to pick up, because we did have to acknowledge, even as early, or as late as last year, we made next to no movement on a lot of the recommendations that were sent forward. And it wasn't until we had hired a chief of equity that we started to push those agendas forward. And the big focus was on Black people experiencing homelessness. Of course, the Latinos, since the population is so large, we started to do a lot of work there, like with the consulates, since that's where a large portion of our undocumented population is. A lot of that work has slowed. It has not stopped. It's just slowed because we were afraid of getting fined or losing funding for continuously doing something that we were kind of expressly told not to do. The unhopeful part is how slow it has gone even this year alone. But the hopeful part is we did finally create groups that we've been looking at the ways to push these recommendations forward. So I can't promise it's going to have a huge impact within the next 2 years, but the way we looked at it was a 5 to year plan about when we can start seeing real change.
Okay, I appreciate your comments. I don't know if you're aware how old that report is now.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so okay, we're definitely past 5 years, but I appreciate your comment and the insight you shared. Thanks for the
Of
presentation.
course, but I mean more so for within us, because we had to openly acknowledge that we did not do very much even with those, even within LAHSA.
Thank you for your questions, Janice. Any other questions for Darick?
Darick, perhaps a little synopsis on the comparison between this report, this data, and that of the RAND report. How do you compare and contrast? What do we take away from RAND as the most salient point? What do we take away from the LAHSA report as the most salient point? Where do they converge? Where do they diverge?
The comparison would be the overall narrative that we're seeing between both reports, that overall unsheltered homelessness for the most part is going down, and then sheltered homelessness is going up. One of the big differences, though, you'll see is I believe so the RAND report goes over Hollywood, I believe Venice, and Skid Row.
Right.
And so we are going to see slight differences between two of the three jurisdictions surveyed, between them and between ours. One of the big reasons you're going to see those differences is the way and the methodology between the reports. So theirs is a much more, not, I don't want to use the word invasive, but intensive survey that they do. However, it's a much smaller jurisdiction. So I wish I had the report or the screenshot right now. But the last time I went with Rand and Louis had showed, even in Hollywood, it's about, I don't even think it's 2 mile, but the size of the radius that they're using compared to us, we go do ours in the entire neighborhood of Hollywood versus a 2 mile radius of Hollywood. So you're going to see a lot of different results when you have somebody who can self-report, such as us, or an observational report, such as the point in time count. Also, the time of the day that ours is done. Theirs is done throughout the year. Ours is just once a year on the coldest night. So we try not to contrast them. It's more so put them together and then get the overall picture. Because we aren't trying to use the point in time count to say this is the exact number of people out there on the streets if you walk out there today. We are just trying to give a snapshot globally about what the trends are looking like. And then you can use the RAND report to really dig down into a local level snapshot of the subpopulations and the demographics going on as well. So you want to put them together more so than contrast. But the overall narrative for both of them are relatively similar. Unsheltered down, sheltered up.
Helpful. Yeah, would this require not a lot more analysis than what we have time and or opportunity to do tonight. But I think your response is very instructive. It's kind of, in one way, apples to oranges in terms of the methodology.
Correct.
One and two, it's interesting we have dissimilar methodologies or anomalous methodologies, and yet the overarching narratives end up being the same. So I want to wrestle with that a little bit, but your response has been helpful. A lot to dig in here, a lot to get into here.
Anything I can send you to help with that, happy to do so.
Yeah, I think we do, and I appreciate your response of being receptive to all data points of influence, even if they may conflict, because there may be some illumination in the conflict on the one hand. On the other hand, we do have to ask ourselves, what's the most helpful in order to get a fuller, better, deeper understanding of what we're up against, on the assumption that when I invoked the language of crisis earlier, it was not to in any way imply a static phenomenon. And that takes me to my next question. To what extent do we take the data and recognize shifts that speak to how dynamic homelessness is? Therefore, the prescriptions for resolution then have to stay current with what in fact is happening in real time, in reality, rather than, for example, Janice reminds us of the report having been more than 5 years ago, 2018, on Black people experiencing homelessness, et cetera. What's different that informs those conclusions, if anything? Just putting a series of questions out for our collective consideration, not to put you on the spot in any way to answer this, Darick, but it's what I think we have to grapple with from the perspective of advocacy around notions of equity, justice, fairness, in terms of the disproportionality that African Americans experience on the one hand, with an eye toward all people who are experiencing homelessness and what dynamic issues are in play there. You may recall we first really started leaning in 2015, 16, 17. The data captured by and about the Latino community was fairly scant at best. And it was just counterintuitive to have that many persons of Latino heritage in the county of Los Angeles, and yet these homeless numbers not reflecting that. So we really had to pay attention. In the subsequent years, you saw these numbers begin to jump. So methodologically, different work was done. And that's just one example of how dynamic the data can be, the methodology to retrieve data, and what's going on prescriptively, how we address the issue among and within various ethnic groups.
Very good for food for thought as well. And I'm happy
Yeah.
that that question's kind of posed around because it's giving me something to think about.
Right.
So just how much more dynamic we're becoming because focusing on the data. I can tell you, even when I started at LAHSA, which was only about 4 or 5 years ago, it seems like we've come leaps and bounds further with what we do with the data and the
Yeah.
fact that we're really diving into the data. And I would say it seems like the county is doing the same because of like the local solutions fund finally utilizing the homeless count data for 90% of their funding recommendations for each of the cities. So I don't know how far we still have to go, but it does at least feel like we're taking some type of steps for really having data-driven decisions more so we've done in years past, and maybe finally taking some steps forward with that as well.
Well, I just want to say, at the risk of uh, being challenged, contradicted, or someone taking offense, yeah, I've heard a lot of presentations from LAHSA over the years. This presentation distinguishes itself in terms of the distillation of the data in part, but uh, being challenged as it relates to what to do with the data and setting forth an invitation for community engagement in the context of what's prescriptive, otherwise stated, what best practices and promising practices could entail. So this presentation stands out in my mind. Now, I'm interested if I'm out on a limb here, those who have been listening for a while, am I being too kind to Darick? I don't intend to be. Uh, that's not my game. I'm trying to get some clarity. All right, uh, Pastor Johnson, Madam Chair, Ms. Martin, Darick can handle whatever your critique is, but I'm here trying to say something right now. What are you thinking?
I appreciate what you're saying. I don't think you're being too nice. I think you're being nice and you're being honest.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
but
that's how is it landing on your ears? I'm afraid to ask, but I did.
I personally appreciate it. I appreciate all the feedback. I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate the candid and the honesty. So,
Yeah, known as a caustic critic, that would be me. Then take the remarks in that context. Janice Fair Martin, what say ye? Norman Stanley Johnson, what say ye? I'm just trying to say, have I grown soft in my old age, or what else? What's going on here?
not a day older than 35, my friend.
That's right. That would be correct. Add 35 to that 35. You got me. Norman, what are you thinking? We've been at this for a minute, Janice. What are you thinking?
No, I think the comments are fair.
Yeah.
It's such a complex issue that
Yeah.
has so much going on. Yeah,
Yeah, but this presentation is hitting me differently. We've heard a lot of presentations. And I know you have, but there's something going on with this that speaks well for the issue potentially. Maybe it's the optimism, maybe it's the leaning in. Pastor Johnson, you're on mute, Doc. I know they didn't have a Zoom at Bishop College, but you got to unmute yourself, man. All right.
Okay. Yeah, I do not think that you're getting soft in your comments, tonight. There is some reason for optimism But the overall complexity of the issue is just not, there's a tremendous amount of work to be done. Now, the thing about it is this report and the data may provide better, grounding for analysis as just over the years, you can see that a lot has been learned. But I do think that the report overall provides some basis for optimism. Probably my biggest issue is the organization LAHSA itself. And so just kind of understanding how LAHSA is functioning is probably the biggest concern that I have growing out of the conversation tonight.
And I'm happy to try to speak about that, Dr. Johnson, if you have any particular questions about it. And staying candid, I can tell you that tomorrow will be our current CEO's last day in office. We said bye to her today. We'll have an interim CEO coming in. She'll be voted in tomorrow. And she's currently the Assistant City Attorney of LA, Ms. Gita O'Neill. We're obviously also downsizing quite a bit. So 300 million plus of the county's dollars will be taken out to go to those other agencies that we talked about. Meaning one of the things that we really focus this presentation on as well is the unsheltered numbers, because that's what LAHSA is going to be focusing on moving forward, is the unsheltered population. So we aren't going to have as much to do with the contracting for the overall county. Even with the general outreach, a lot of that will be more so focused on the city. But we will keep, well, not control, but we will keep leading the COC. So when it does come to working with our service providers, we will make sure we pass over whatever the best practices are, though we may not be the driver of said best practices or the driver of policy. It's going to require much more county and city collaboration to see what these best practices are. But one thing that we will continue to lead is this homeless count. So at the very least, maybe optimism will come from your guys' side about more accurate data coming out, or presenting the data more accurately, or just feeling more confident in what you guys are looking at, instead of hearing about all the times that LAHSA messed up here, or the data that LAHSA messed up there. Why is this shelter count wrong? Why is the app messing up? We'll have more focus on fewer things. So maybe we'll be able to send out more confidence in this limited amount of things that we actually do. Hopefully.
All right, thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
Darick, I have a question about the sheltered versus unsheltered. In the results, it showed that you shared that sheltered homelessness increased.
Correct.
Could you kind of talk us through what does that mean? And are there any thoughts around why?
That is the trend that we want to see. So what it's basically saying is more people or less people are rough sleeping. So literally sleeping on the ground or in a sleeping bag on the sidewalk. And more people are saying yes to going indoors, even if it is a shelter. And with the encampment resolution efforts, more shelters were able to come online. So we got more access to more units and more beds. More people saying yes, like we said earlier, more people have access to food, water, services while they're in the shelters. It's also why we're seeing these faster throughputs to the permanent housing. For the most part, to get permanent housing, you need your core 4 documents, right? At least the ID or the birth certificate. It's hard for our outreach workers to get that for folks who are literally homeless. Much easier for them to get to the full core 4 when they are in a shelter because they're sheltered in place. or even if we need to do something as simple as drive them over to the consulate to get their background paperwork. So that's one of the highlights we've seen for the past 2 years. Unsheltered goes down, shelter goes up. So we see a smaller overall drop, but you do see a large drop in the areas that we want to see those large drops. And so one of the narratives that we try to educate people on is maybe it is a good thing, or maybe it is a win to say people got indoors, even if that indoor is not a permanent solution, it's a shelter, because that is better than literally rough sleeping on the streets. So I hope that kind of answers.
It does. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Is the hope also that if the number of unhoused or unsheltered Angelinos decreases and the number of sheltered unhoused Angelinos increases, does that imply that some of our interventions, is the hope that that means some of our interventions are working?
We're definitely seeing that for the chronic homelessness as well when it comes
Mhm.
to some of the interventions as well, because those are the folks who would be often going into shelters and then going back onto the streets. The one thing I don't know if we have in these presentations is that number of who has gone into shelter or how many times someone has gone into shelter. We can see your first bout of homelessness, how long your bouts of homelessness has been, and then if you've had multiple bouts. But I'm not sure how accurately we can see if you've gone into shelter and then back out of shelter. Although I'm sure we can pull that along with how many different interventions or how many programs you have been. We can see how many times you've been touched, but what different program, what was the outcome of each program? Because that's a good question that you're raising. Maybe some of the interventions we're doing are getting better, or maybe some of the people doing these interventions are getting better, and that's what's leading to the sustained success. And I think we can see the sustained success if you have somebody experiencing chronic homelessness go down, which would historically say they have not had any sustained success. And now we are seeing a plateau or a switch in that trend. But something that might be
Like
interesting for us
homelessness
to dig into.
recidivism rates. Sorry.
Mhm.
Got it. I have one more question.
Yes,
If
ma'am.
nobody else has a question right now. For when we see our fellow Angelinos that are becoming unhoused for the first time, do you have comparative data to say, or I mean, I'm sure you all have the data, but how does this year, how do those numbers compare to previous years? That if we are seeing a decrease in overall homelessness, our unsheltered population becoming unhoused for the first time, has this, in comparison to the last year, the last 3 years, the last 5 years, has this number decreased
That one I would
or
have to dig
increased?
into. Yeah, because this is the first
Okay.
time that we dug into that for the presentation about the first bout of
Okay.
homelessness. Last year, we really kind of just focused on the fact that it was economic hardship, right? Like we know that it's the price of rent, and especially coming out of COVID, we knew it was going to be the unlawful detainers coming out and the eviction rates. But this year, we dived more into what caused that first bout, how long was that first bout, how many people experienced that first bout, and so I guess I could have gone more thoroughly into these numbers here as well. So we can see the total population of 18 plus, and then the total population of that 18 plus who's on their first time, and then who's been less than a year. But I do think that we can do that comparatively, at least back in 2023. But I'll check with my data team to see how fast I can get that out there, because that's another thing that might be a good matrix to review.
Cool.
Great
Thank you.
question. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Darick.
And happy to take any other questions.
The other question that occurs to me as we kind of delve into the data, we talk about these two data points, unsheltered down, sheltered up, and which both kind of complement each other in terms of what's arguably progress. Whether or not people perceive this to be progress, popularly speaking, is another question.
Exactly.
Data is one thing. Lived experiences and perceptions of the populace is another thing. And so there is a level of incongruity there that I think you full well know and appreciate. Am I correct in that?
Correct.
So from a public relations, advocacy, education vantage point, not a question that you need to answer now. We'll invite you back and we can dive into that a little more deeply. Something does need to happen to cause people to appreciate that progress may be real rather than not.
Mm.
And the various elements from LAHSA to the city's attempt to set up a new department, the county's early implementation of its new department, LAHSA doing what it does. It seems like in some ways we are dealing with the proliferation of bureaucracy, which could itself militate against results that are real, irrespective of what the data might be suggesting. And I think that's a mouthful. And I just want us to kind of get our heads around that, our arms around that, and in any way we can to the best of our ability. And I pose these things on the assumption, Darick, that you'll return and have conversation about some of this with us, because I'm sure we have questions along these lines. A couple things more. One, how deep is a dive in terms of the faith-based communities relationship, proximity to the issue in terms of housing persons and doing the work of him that's sent us while it is yet day? What do we have there? Do we have a report in the making similar to what was done on women, Native Americans, African Americans, that speaks to the faith community's response to homelessness? A question. Then the other question I wanted to ask is when we go into the data, what do we know about uh, the street to prison pipeline? What do we know about recidivism? How does that break out in terms of demographic dimensions? I don't know that the point in time count reached into that or not, but to the extent that we already know that Men's Central Jail is essentially a feeder, how have we sought to update that information and what does it look like? Because are we dealing with more women? Obviously not at Men's Central Jail, but in terms of the carceral system broadly defined in Los Angeles County, uptick in women related to homelessness. How fresh is our data along those lines? And as well as the age factors, so gender, age, ethnicity, etc. And we already know that the vortex of violence reigns supreme, most heavy in terms of the transgender population. How is that issue trending? Do we have data on that?
Yes. So
Okay.
it should be as early as tomorrow. We'll be
Okay.
finalizing and updating our essentially one pagers that show the trends from last year to this year and all the population that you had just mentioned,
Excellent.
except the faith-based population and then the incarceration population. Although we do have specific teams who does have that data for that, we usually just don't upload that with the homeless count data. But that's a good thought as well. So I will go to both of those teams before the next iteration of this meeting, and I'll come back with the subpopulation demographic information so we can look at the trends there, and maybe as a community we can talk about what do we want to see as we work for these numbers, and at least that way from internally I can push some of these agendas from LAHSA or see what kind of progress we can start making with that community feedback. And then I will also get the information about what we've done with the faith-based community and the incarceration populations as well, to see if there's any trends that we can notice or how deep dive is that data that we have, so I can pass that over to you all as well.
Yeah, and or are we failing?
Exactly. Yeah, we'll be able to see all of that.
You know,
or even failing to get the data in general.
Right.
We need to
Right.
start.
All right, Madam Chair. I'm going back to sleep now.
No, don't leave so soon, Supervisor. Those were some really important questions, so thank you.
Thank you.
Darick, I know we've taken a lot of your time this evening, so I want to ask, does anybody else have any additional questions for Darick? Well, on that note, Darick, we are grateful to be your second presentation. You did a fantastic job. So thank you so much for all that you and the LAHSA team are doing for these counts. Thank you to all of us as Angelinos, to all of you as LAHSA, just for supporting and addressing this moral crisis of our times. Our next meeting will be in September. So the Empowerment Congress will go on an administrative recess for August so that we can tend to additional business to make sure we continue to stay prepared for the rest of the year and beyond. So our next meeting will be Thursday, September 11th, and we look forward to sharing the exciting speakers we have lined up for then as well. So Darick, again, thank you so much. If there are no other announcements today, we will adjourn our meeting.
That's the longest hiatus we've had. I mean, we've been meeting for over 2 years every other week, pretty religiously. So to have a practically 5 to 6 week break is, we might not know how to act.
Right. It might be too long. We might just have to schedule something in between.
Yeah, just might have to. All right.
Works for me.
Thanks, Darick.
It was
Thank
a pleasure,
you.
everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you
Darick.
guys.
All right, thank you.
I'll see you
Thank you,
September
everyone.
11th. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.